The screams echoed through the rainforest canopy, raw and primal. The kind of sound that makes your blood freeze. Dr. Justin Schmidt clutched his forearm, face twisted in agony as the venom coursed through his tissue like liquid fire spreading beneath the skin. He'd been stung before hundreds of times, actually, but this was different. This wasn't just pain. This was a complete neurological assault, a sensation so overwhelming that his brain couldn't process anything else. His fingers locked into rigid claws, his vision blurred. Every heartbeat sent fresh waves of electric torment radiating from the puncture wound. And for a moment, just a moment, he wondered if this would be the one that finally killed him. The culprit. A creature barely longer than your thumbnail, weighing less than a grain of rice, armed with a venom cocktail so sophisticated it puts pharmaceutical labs to shame. Welcome to the world of insect stings, where size means nothing and pain is measured on scales that make childbirth look merciful. Some stings feel like a gentle bee kiss. Others will make you beg for unconsciousness, and the worst, they'll rewrite your understanding of what the human nervous system can endure. If you're ready to feel the venom yourself, smash that like button and subscribe so you never miss what attacks next. Trust me, you'll want to know what's hunting in your backyard. The science of pain is deceptively simple until an insect decides to inject you with millions of years of evolutionary warfare. When a stinger penetrates your skin, it's not just punching a hole, it's delivering a precision-engineered cocktail of peptides, enzymes, and neurotoxins designed to do exactly one thing: make you suffer. Your nerve endings explode with signals, flooding your brain with distress messages. Histamines trigger inflammation. Melatonin tears apart cell membranes. Kininins dilate blood vessels and drop your blood pressure. And phospholipases, they're literally digesting your tissue from the inside out, liquefying cell walls so the venom spreads faster. This isn't accidental. Every molecule in that venom has been refined over millennia to cause maximum disruption with minimum substance. A single sting might inject less than a microgram of material, but that microscopic dose can bring a grown human to their knees, sobbing uncontrollably, begging for relief that won't come for hours. Dr. Justin Schmidt, the entomologist who literally wrote the book on sting pain, created a scale from 1 to 4 to measure this torture. Level 1 feels like a spark from static electricity. Level 4 feels like someone's holding a blowtorch to your flesh while simultaneously running electrical current through your bones. But even Schmidt's scale has its limits because some stings transcend measurement. Some stings exist in a category of agony that language fails to capture. Let's start with the creatures that hurt but won't destroy you. Number 10 on our countdown: the Western Yellowjacket. You've probably been stung by one of these temperamental bastards at a summer barbecue or while hiking through the wrong patch of woods. The Western Yellowjacket scores about a 2 on Schmidt's scale, which sounds manageable until you realize these insects hunt in swarms and can sting repeatedly without dying. One Yellowjacket sting feels like a cigarette burned sharp, immediate, intensely localized. The venom contains a compound called mastoperin that destabilizes mast cells, triggering a massive histamine dump that causes swelling, redness, and that characteristic hot, throbbing sensation. But here's what makes Yellowjackets genuinely dangerous: they're vengeful. When one stings you, it releases an alarm pheromone that marks you as a threat. Suddenly, you're not dealing with one angry insect, you're dealing with 50, 100, 200, all converging on you in a furious cloud of black and yellow. Each sting pumps more venom into your system. Your histamine response compounds. In rare cases, people have been stung over 1,000 times. Their body is so overwhelmed by venom that they go into shock, their organs shutting down one by one. But if you're only stung once or twice, you'll survive with nothing but a painful welt and a newfound respect for picnic table vigilance. Number 9 brings us to the giant desert centipede, and yes, technically, it's not an insect, it's a chylopod, but its venom delivery system operates on the same nightmarish principles. These segmented horrors grow up to 8 inches long, with modified front legs called forcipules that curve inward like hypodermic needles. When they strike, those forcipules punch through skin and inject a venom cocktail containing serotonin, histamine, and a particularly nasty compound called SSM spooky toxin that overstimulates nerve endings. The pain is immediate and totalizing, like someone's injecting battery acid directly into your muscle tissue. One victim described it as feeling like their hand was being crushed in a vice while simultaneously being set on fire. The venom causes localized necrosis. In some cases, the tissue around the bite actually dies, turning black and sloughing off in sheets. But what really distinguishes the centipede is the duration. Yellowjacket stings fade in hours. Centipede bites. You're looking at 3 to 5 days of escalating agony. The venom spreading through lymphatic channels, causing waves of nausea, fever, and muscle spasms that make sleep impossible. Number 8. The Florida harvester ant, a species that proves you don't need to be large to inflict memorable suffering. These reddish-brown ants measure barely a quarter-inch long, but their venom contains one of the highest concentrations of toxic proteins found in any insect. When a harvester ant stings, it first bites down with powerful mandibles to anchor itself, then curves its abdomen forward to drive its stinger deep into your flesh. The venom contains brutally effective phospholipases that rupture cell membranes and alkaloids that specifically target pain receptors. Schmidt rated this sting a solid 3 out of 4, describing it as bold and unrelenting. It's like somebody using a power drill to excavate your ingrown toenail. The pain doesn't just radiate TB8 pulses, coming in rhythmic waves that intensify over the first 30 minutes before plateauing at a level that makes rational thought difficult. Victims report feeling nauseated, dizzy, experiencing chest tightness and difficulty breathing, even without being allergic. The sting site swells into a hard knot that remains tender for a week. And like yellowjackets, harvester ants rarely attack alone. Number 7 takes us back to the wasp family with the southern yellowjacket, a more aggressive cousin of our number 10 entry. These wasps have adapted to human environments with disturbing efficiency, building massive underground colonies that can house over 5,000 individuals. Their venom contains higher concentrations of hyaluronidase, an enzyme that breaks down connective tissue and allows the other toxins to spread faster and penetrate deeper. The pain is sharper than the Western variety, more sustained, with a quality that victims describe as drilling or boring. But the real nightmare scenario involves disturbing a nest. Southern yellowjackets will pursue threats for over 100 yards, stinging with mechanical efficiency, covering exposed skin in welts that merge into swollen masses. Their venom also has stronger allergenic properties. People without prior sensitivities can develop anaphylaxis after multiple stings, their immune systems overwhelmed by the foreign proteins flooding their bloodstream. And here's the truly unsettling part. Climate change is pushing these colonies further north, expanding their range into territories where populations have no evolutionary experience with them. No learned caution, no instinctive recognition of the threat those black and yellow bodies represent. The line between painful and dangerous is thinner than most people realize. These first entries cause suffering, absolutely, but they're just the opening act. The venom gets more sophisticated from here. The pain intensifies, and the creatures responsible, they're about to get a lot more creative with their torture. Number 6 introduces us to the red harvester ant, a species that takes everything terrible about its Florida cousin and amplifies it with desert-hardened venom that's been battle-tested against predators far larger than humans. These ants inhabit the southwestern United States, building sprawling underground colonies, surrounded by cleared zones of bare earth nature, a warning sign that something defensive lurks below. The red harvester ant's venom is approximately 20 times more toxic than that of a honeybee, packed with peptides that don't just stimulate pain receptors, but actually damage them. causing them to misfire for hours after the initial sting. Schmidt rated this experience a 3, describing it with his characteristic poetic precision, bold and relentless. Somebody is using a power drill to excavate your ingrown toenail. But what makes the red harvester truly nightmarish is the venom's staying power. Most insect stings peak within 30 minutes and gradually subside. Red harvester venom gets worse. The pain builds in intensity for the first hour, reaching levels that make victims vomit from the sheer neurological overload. The sting site throbs with every heartbeat, radiating heat like a coal pressed against the skin. Swelling spreads in a hard, hot ring that can encompass an entire limb. And then comes the secondary phase waves of muscle spasms, cramping so severe that victims report feeling like their bones are trying to break through muscle tissue. This isn't just pain. This is your nervous system being chemically hijacked and forced to simulate catastrophic injury for hours on end. The real horror stories come from multiple stings. A construction worker in Arizona accidentally drove his excavator through a red harvester supercolony, rupturing dozens of chambers and sending thousands of worker ants into defensive frenzy. He made it 15 feet before they covered his legs, his arms, his neck. Over 300 stings in under 2 minutes. He described the sensation as being immersed in boiling water while someone beat him with a baseball bat wrapped in barbed wire. His body went into shock. His blood pressure dropped. He hallucinated from the venom load, seeing shadows crawling across his hospital room ceiling, feeling phantom stings on skin that bore no marks. 6 hours later, the pain had barely diminished. 3 days later, he still couldn't sleep through the night. The psychological aftermath lasted months. Panic attacks whenever he saw reddish dirt. Nightmares of being buried alive under a writhing carpet of mandibles and stingers. The ants had fundamentally reprogrammed his fear response. Number 5 brings us to the tarantula hawk, a wasp so terrifyingly specialized that its entire existence revolves around one of nature's most apex predators, the tarantula spider. These wasps are enormous by insect standards. Some species reaching over 2 inches in length with metallic blue-black bodies and brilliant orange wings that seem to glow in desert sunlight. They hunt tarantulas, not to eat them, but to serve as living incubators for their larvae. When a female tarantula hawk finds her prey, she engages in a wrestling match that can last minutes, trying to land a single sting in the spider's nerve center. That sting contains a neurotoxin so potent it instantly paralyzes creatures, weighing hundreds of times more than the wasp itself. And if you're unlucky enough to be stung, Schmidt rated it a 4 out of 4, the highest possible rating. And his description has become legendary in entomology circles. Blinding, fierce, shockingly electric. A running hairdryer has just been dropped into your bubble bath. The pain is so overwhelming that victims often scream involuntarily, their vocal cords bypassing conscious control. One researcher who took a sting for science reported that he couldn't form coherent thoughts, couldn't remember his own name, couldn't do anything except experience pure, distilled agony radiating from a single point on his hand. The venom targets voltage-gated sodium channels in nerve cells, forcing them to fire continuously, creating a pain signal so intense that it drowns out every other sensory input. But here's what separates the tarantula hawk from creatures that cause longer-lasting damage. The pain is mercifully brief. 3 to 5 minutes of absolute hell, and then it fades almost as quickly as it arrived, leaving nothing but a small red mark and traumatic memory. The wasp's venom isn't designed to kill or cause lasting injury, designed to educate. Any creature stung by a tarantula hawk learns an immediate, unforgettable lesson. Do not mess with the metallic blue wasp. Ever. The venom is a teaching tool refined over millions of years of evolution. A chemical reminder so potent that a single experience creates permanent behavioral change. Birds that accidentally eat tarantula hawks spit them out immediately and never make that mistake again. Mammals that investigate the colorful insects learn their lesson in seconds, and humans, We join the long list of species that have been educated in nature's most painful classroom. Number 4 introduces the paper wasp, a creature whose understated name belies its capacity for inflicting sustained, throbbing misery. Paper wasps build those familiar hexagonal nests under eaves, in attics, inside hollow trees, anywhere that offers shelter and proximity to human activity. Unlike their yellowjacket cousins, paper wasps are generally docile, content to hunt caterpillars and mind their own business. But disturb their nest, threaten their colony, accidentally brush against the papery structure while trimming hedges. You've just activated one of nature's most efficient defensive systems. The paper wasp's venom contains high concentrations of serotonin and acetylcholine, neurotransmitters that your own body uses for signaling, but which become instruments of torture when injected at concentrated levels. The sting registers as immediate, sharp, and deeply penetrating. Victims consistently describe it as feeling like a red-hot nail being driven into flesh. Schmidt gave it a 3, noting its caustic and burning quality, like someone extinguishing a cigar on your tongue. But the paper wasp's true weapon is persistence. The venom doesn't fade quickly. Instead, it settles into a deep, bone-aching throb that intensifies whenever you move the affected area. Your lymph nodes swell. The pain radiates along nerve pathways, creating the sensation that the venom is crawling through your body like something alive. And these wasps can sting multiple times, each injection adding to the venom load in your system, compounding the neurological assault. A landscaper in Georgia was stung 47 times when his weed trimmer vibrated a nest hidden in dense ivy. He described the experience as feeling like his arms were being crushed in industrial machinery while someone poured acid on the wounds. The swelling was so severe that doctors worried about compartment syndrome, the pressure inside his forearms, building 2 levels that could cut off blood flow and kill muscle tissue. He spent 2 days in the hospital on intravenous anti-inflammatories and opioid painkillers that barely touched the agony. 6 months later, he still experienced phantom pains. His nervous system so traumatized that it occasionally recreated the sensation of being stung even when nothing was touching his skin. The creatures we've covered so far cause genuine suffering, the kind of pain that makes strong people cry and tough people whimper. But they're still in the realm of the survivable, the temporarily unbearable. What comes next crosses into territory where the line between venom and chemical warfare becomes uncomfortably blurred. The top 3 stings on our list don't just hurt, they injure, they damage. They leave marks that last far longer than the pain itself. And the insects responsible have evolved venoms so sophisticated, so perfectly calibrated to cause maximum suffering, that they've earned their places as nature's most feared arthropods. Number 3 on our descent into entomological hell belongs to the warrior wasp, a Central and South American species whose name alone should inspire immediate retreat. These wasps construct massive suspended nests that can house thousands of individuals, all fiercely protective of their papery fortress. The warrior wasp's appearance announces its threat bodies nearly an inch long, burnt orange coloration, and an abdomen that curves ominously downward, keeping the stinger perpetually ready. But it's their behavior that truly unsettles. When threatened, warrior wasps don't just swarm, they drum. Hundreds of wasps simultaneously beat their wings and bodies against the nest in a synchronized rhythm, creating a pulsing war chant that can be heard 50 feet away. It's a sound that makes mammals flee on instinct, a prehistoric warning that predates language. And if you don't run, if you're too curious, too close, or simply too unlucky to escape, the swarm descends like a liquid nightmare, each wasp striking with mechanical precision. Schmidt rated the warrior wasp at 4 out of 4, placing it in the same rarefied category as the tarantula hawk. But with a crucial difference, warrior wasp pain lasts. His description reads like horror poetry: torture. You are chained in the flow of an active volcano. Why did I start this list? The venom contains extraordinarily high levels of acetylcholine and serotonin. the same neurotransmitters found in paper wasp venom, but at concentrations that approach pharmaceutical-grade purity. When that cocktail hits your bloodstream, every nerve in the affected area fires simultaneously and continuously. The pain doesn't pulse or throb, it's constant, a sustained scream from your nervous system that lasts for hours. One biologist stung during field research in Costa Rica reported that the pain was so overwhelming he could unwalk. He lay on the ground for 40 minutes, unable to process any thought except the burning, crushing, tearing sensation radiating from the sting site on his shoulder. His field assistant had to carry him back to camp, and even after 6 hours, the pain remained intense enough that he considered seeking emergency evacuation. The swelling was grotesque. His entire shoulder and upper arm ballooned to nearly twice normal size. The skin stretched tight and hot to the touch, discolored in mottled patterns of purple and red. But individual stings are just the opening chapter of warrior wasp horror. The real nightmares come from nest disturbances. In 2019, a group of illegal loggers in the Amazon accidentally felled a tree containing a mature warrior wasp colony. The impact ruptured the nest, sending approximately 4,000 wasps into immediate attack mode. 3 men were stung hundreds of times before they could reach their truck. One didn't make it. He stumbled, fell, and the swarm covered him completely, stinging every exposed inch of skin, forcing venom into his eyes, his mouth, his nostrils. By the time his companions pulled him free and drove toward the nearest clinic 40 miles away on dirt roads, he was convulsing. The venom load had triggered a systemic inflammatory response so severe that his organs began failing. His throat swelled shut. His blood pressure crashed. He died before they reached help, drowning in his own tissue fluid as anaphylaxis and venom toxicity combined to shut down his respiratory system. The other 2 survivors spent a week in intensive care, their bodies fighting to process venom quantities that exceeded anything most urban hospitals ever encounter. One lost partial vision in his left eye from direct stings to the eyelid. The other developed chronic nerve pain that persists to this day, his damaged neurons misfiring randomly, creating phantom stings that wake him from sleep. Number 2 brings us to the executioner wasp, a species discovered relatively recently and still being studied by scientists brave enough or foolish enough to engage with it. Native to Central and South America, the executioner wasp grows up to 1.5 inches long, making it one of the largest wasps on Earth. Its body is a warning painted in yellows, oranges, and black scolorations so vivid it seems almost artificial. But it's the venom that earned this species its grim name. In 2018, Coyote Peterson, a wildlife educator known for intentionally taking stings on camera, declared the executioner wasp in the most painful sting he'd ever experienced, surpassing even the bullet ant that held the previous record. The venom contains a unique peptide structure that researchers are still analyzing, but its effects are unmistakable, immediate, catastrophic pain that does unpeak at plateaus at a level described as unbearable and remains there for hours. Peterson's description, delivered through gritted teeth and obvious agony, painted a picture of suffering that transcended simple pain scales. He reported feeling like his forearm was being crushed between hydraulic press plates while simultaneously being injected with molten metal. The venom caused his entire arm to swell within minutes, the tissue expanding so rapidly that he could watch it happening in real time. His blood pressure spiked. He experienced waves of nausea so intense he had to fight not to vomit. The pain didn't diminish for over 3 hours, and residual throbbing continued for nearly 12 hours after the initial sting. When doctors later examined the sting site, they found evidence of significant tissue damage. The venom had literally dissolved cell walls in a localized area, creating a zone of necrosis that took weeks to heal. The scar remained visible months later, a permanent reminder of an encounter that lasted seconds but inflicted suffering measured in hours. What makes the executioner wasp particularly terrifying is how aggressively it defends territory. unlike many wasp species that require direct nest disturbance to trigger attack. Executioner wasps establish large defensive perimeters around their colonies and will attack anything that enters. They don't warn, they don't posture. They simply launch from the nest like heat-seeking missiles, targeting the largest warm-blooded creature in range. And their stings aren't single defensive jabs, they sting repeatedly, injecting massive doses of venom with each strike. A park ranger in Honduras was stung 7 times while simply walking past a tree containing an executioner nest he had uneven noticed. The wasps detected his movement from over 20 feet away and responded with overwhelming force. He described the cumulative effect as feeling like his entire arm was being crushed in a vice while someone poured acid into the wounds. The swelling was so severe that doctors had to make small incisions to relieve pressure and prevent permanent muscle and nerve damage from compression. He spent 4 days in the hospital, administered powerful anti-inflammatories and opioid painkillers that he said barely touched the deep, gnawing agony that had settled into his bones. And now we arrive at number 1, the absolute pinnacle of insect-induced suffering, the creature that makes everything we've discussed so far seem manageable by comparison. This is on just the worst insect sting in the world. It's one of the most painful, non-lethal experiences the natural world can inflict on a human being. Indigenous peoples who live alongside this insect have incorporated it into brutal initiation ceremonies that test the limits of human endurance. Scientists who study it do so with reverence and fear. And anyone who's been stung, they never, ever forget. The bullet. Ant earned its name not from its appearance or its habits, but from the sensation its venom creates. Victims universally describe it as feeling like being shot, like having a red-hot bullet lodged in their flesh, burning and destroying from the inside out. What makes this venom so devastatingly effective? Why does it cause pain that transcends every other sting we've examined? And how do human beings survive an experience that has been measured as one of the highest pain levels the human nervous system can register without loss of consciousness? The bullet ant Paraponera clavata stands alone at the apex of the pain pyramid. A creature so perfectly evolved to inflict agony that its venom has become the gold standard against which all other insect stings are measured. Schmidt's Pain Index doesn't just give it a 4 out of 4. It created the 4 category specifically to accommodate this ant's venom because nothing else came close. His description has achieved almost mythical status among entomologists. Pure, intense, brilliant pain. Like walking over flaming charcoal with a 3-inch nail embedded in your heel. But even that, poetic horror fails to capture the full reality of a bullet ant sting. This isn't pain that arrives and fades. This is pain that builds, that evolves, that transforms into something beyond sensation, and becomes an all-consuming experience that colonizes every corner of your consciousness for hours. The bullet ant inhabits the rainforests of Central and South America, building colonies at the bases of trees where it hunts for nectar and small arthropods. Workers grow up to 1 inch long, with powerful mandibles and a stinger that extends from an abdomen built like an armored war machine. They not aggressive by nature. Bullet ants would much rather avoid conflict, but they defend their territory with absolute ferocity when threatened. And their venom? It's a masterpiece of evolutionary biochemistry. The primary compound is a neurotoxic peptide called ponerotoxin, a molecule so specifically designed to cause pain that researchers have studied it extensively in hopes of understanding how pain itself functions at the molecular level. Ponerotoxin targets voltage-gated sodium channels in nerve cells, forcing them wide open and keeping them that way. Your neurons begin firing uncontrollably, sending pain signals to your brain at maximum intensity without pause, without relief, without even brief moments of reduced sensation. It's chemical pain in its purest form. Uncontaminated by actual tissue damage. Your body is being forced to simulate catastrophic injury that isn't really happening. The initial sting feels exactly as described, like being shot. Victims report a sensation of penetrating impact, followed immediately by an explosion of pain that radiates outward in waves. But that's just the first 30 seconds. After that, the real horror begins. The pain doesn't peak, it continues intensifying for the first 15 to 20 minutes, climbing to levels that cause involuntary screaming, weeping, and in some cases, complete mental breakdown. One researcher described being unable to recognize where he was, who he was with, or what had happened to him. His entire reality had narrowed to a single burning point of agony on his hand that had somehow expanded to fill the universe. The pain consumed rational thought, memory, personality, everything except the raw animal awareness that something catastrophic was happening to his body. Another victim reported that he begged his companions to cut off his hand, genuinely believing that amputation was preferable to continuing to experience what the venom was doing to him. And then comes the secondary phase, what indigenous peoples call the waves. The pain begins to pulse, arriving in rhythmic surges that make victims feel like they're being repeatedly shot, each wave bringing fresh intensity that somehow exceeds what came before. Muscle spasms begin, uncontrollable tremors that shake the entire affected limb. The arm or leg becomes hypersensitive, so reactive that even the lightest touch, even air moving across the skin, triggers fresh explosions of pain. Victims report feeling like their bones are vibrating, like electricity is coursing through their skeleton, like their blood has been replaced with acid. This phase lasts for hours, typically 4 to 8, though some cases have reported pain lasting over 12 hours. There is no position that brings relief, no medication that significantly reduces the agony. You simply have to endure it, riding out wave after wave after wave of suffering that rewrites your understanding of what pain actually is. The Saturmal people of Brazil have incorporated bullet ant stings into their initiation ritual for young men entering adulthood. They weave hundreds of bullet ants into gloves made of leaves with the stingers pointing inward. To complete the ritual, initiates must wear these gloves for 10 minutes while dancing, taking hundreds of simultaneous stings. The pain is so overwhelming that boys often lose consciousness. Those who remain aware experience hallucinations, their overwhelmed nervous systems creating false sensory input to try to explain the inexplicable signals flooding their brain. Their hands swell to grotesque proportions, becoming useless clubs of inflamed tissue. The pain doesn't end when the gloves come off, it continues for days, gradually diminishing but never completely disappearing until nearly a week has passed. And this isn't a one-time ordeal. The ritual must be repeated 20 times before a boy is considered a man. The Saturmal believe this teaches resilience, strength, and the ability to endure life's inevitable suffering. From a Western perspective, it's systematic torture. But it demonstrates something crucial about bullet ant venom. It causes immense pain without causing proportional damage. The initiates survive. Their hands heal. The venom is calibrated to educate, not destroy. But what about cases where multiple stings occur accidentally, without ritual structure or cultural context? In 2015, a botanist in Ecuador was documenting plant species when she leaned against a tree trunk housing a disturbed bullet ant colony. 12 ants stung her back, shoulders, and neck before she could pull away. She described the cumulative effect as feeling like she'd been hit by a car and then immediately set on fire. The pain was so intense she couldn't breathe properly. Her diaphragm spasmed uncontrollably, causing her to hyperventilate and then hold her breath in irregular, gasping patterns. Her field team called for emergency evacuation, but the nearest medical facility was 6 hours away by boat and vehicle. She spent those 6 hours in a state that witnesses described as dissociative, conscious, but unreachable, making sounds that weren't quite language, occasionally screaming when the pain waves peaked. By the time she reached the hospital, her back was swollen in grotesque lumps, the tissue so inflamed that it had begun restricting her breathing mechanically. Doctors administered morphine, anti-inflammatories, antihistamines. Nothing provided more than marginal relief. She had to simply wait for the venom to degrade naturally, to be processed and eliminated by her body's detoxification systems. The acute phase lasted 11 hours. Residual pain continued for 4 days. She lost feeling in patches of skin where nerve damage had occurred, sensation that took months to partially return, and the psychological impact. She developed severe anxiety around fieldwork, experiencing panic attacks when entering rainforest environments. Her traumatized nervous system creating associations between forest sounds, humid air, and the anticipation of unbearable pain. The bullet ant's venom has also attracted scientific interest for potential medical applications, particularly in pain research and drug development. By understanding exactly how ponotoxin creates such intense pain without causing significant tissue damage, researchers hope to develop better pain medications that can block those specific pathways. Some studies have explored using modified versions of the toxin as a treatment for chronic pain conditions, the theory being that controlled exposure might desensitize overactive pain receptors. But this research proceeds slowly, cautiously, because working with bullet ant venom means working with one of nature's most effective instruments of suffering. What makes the bullet ant truly the worst sting in the world isn't just the intensity, the duration, the psychological toll, and the way the venom seems specifically designed to assault consciousness itself. Other stings hurt worse initially or cause more tissue damage. But nothing else combines hour after hour of unrelenting agony with muscle spasms, waves of intensifying pain, and a sensation so overwhelming it can fragment your sense of self. Nothing else has earned such fearsome respect from every culture that lives alongside it. And nothing else has left such vivid, lasting psychological scars on nearly everyone who's experienced it. The bullet ant isn't just an insect with a painful sting as a reminder that evolution can create suffering so perfect, so refined that it becomes almost transcendent in its horror. The aftermath of a bullet ant sting doesn't end when the pain finally fades to a manageable throb. Victims report lasting effects that linger for weeks, sometimes months, occasionally years. The most common is localized nerve damage, the venom's assault on sodium channels can cause permanent changes in nerve function, leaving patches of skin with altered sensation. Some victims describe persistent tingling, others report numbness, and still others experience paradoxical pain where nerves misfire randomly, creating brief jolts of phantom sting sensations triggered by nothing at all. One anthropologist who was stung during field research in Peru reported that for 6 months afterward, sudden temperature changes would trigger sharp pains in the original sting site, as if his damaged nerves were interpreting cold water or hot coffee as renewed venom attacks. His nervous system had been fundamentally reprogrammed by a single injection of ponotoxin, left with a hair-trigger sensitivity that treated ordinary stimuli as threats. The psychological damage often exceeds the physical. Post-traumatic stress responses are remarkably common among bullet ant sting victims, particularly those who experienced multiple simultaneous stings or who were alone when stung. The brain treats extreme pain as a survival-critical event, encoding every detail of the experience into deep memory structures designed to prevent future encounters with the threat. This adaptive response made sense for our ancestors, remembering what causes catastrophic pain keeps you alive. But in modern contexts, it manifests as hypervigilance, anxiety, and intrusive memories that surface without warning. A conservation worker in Colombia who was stung while surveying rainforest plots reported having nightmares for over a year, vivid visceral dreams where he felt the sting happening again and again, waking with his heart racing and phantom pains radiating through the limb that had actually been stung. He eventually required therapy to process the trauma, to convince his limbic system that the threat had passed and he was safe. The talking cure helped, but his therapist noted that trauma from extreme physical pain has unique qualities that distinguish it from other PTSD triggers. The body remembers in ways that pure talk therapy struggles to address. But here's what's truly unsettling about bullet ants. They're not particularly rare, and their habitat overlaps significantly with human activity in Central and South America. Ecotourism brings thousands of people into rainforest environments every year, most of them unaware of what a bullet ant looks like or how to identify their nests. The ants often forage on low vegetation, traveling along the ground, climbing trees at human height. They're not hiding in remote, inaccessible areas. They're present in parks, near villages, along hiking trails that see daily foot traffic. And climate change is gradually altering their range, pushing populations into new territories where they've never been documented before. As rainforests fragment and human development encroaches on previously pristine habitats, encounters between bullet ants and unprepared humans are increasing. Medical facilities in regions where bullet ants are common report steady streams of sting victims during tourist season, most of them shocked that something so painful could come from an insect they barely saw before it struck. The deadliest documented cases involving bullet ants typically are from the venom itself to cause pain. Not lethality, but from secondary complications. Severe allergic reactions can occur, though they're rare. More commonly, the danger comes from the victim's response to the pain. People stung while climbing have fallen from trees, their grip failing as muscle spasms overtook their hands. Hikers stung on steep terrain have tumbled down slopes, compounding the sting with traumatic injuries that wouldn't have occurred without the venom-induced loss of motor control. In 2017, an elderly man in French Guiana was stung while working in his garden. The pain triggered a cardiac event not directly from the venom, but from the massive stress response his body mounted in reaction to the pain signals flooding his system. His blood pressure spiked, his heart rate became erratic, and he suffered a myocardial infarction that required emergency medical intervention. He survived, but the incident highlighted a grim reality for vulnerable populations: the elderly, those with cardiovascular conditions. Anyone whose system is already compromised. Non-lethal venom can trigger cascading failures that turn painful into deadly. The evolutionary logic behind bullet and venom is both elegant and horrifying. The ants are relatively slow-moving, conspicuous, and protein-rich. They should be easy targets for predators. But their venom has made them essentially immune to predation. Nothing eats bullet ants. Nothing. Birds that accidentally grab them drop them immediately and learn instant, permanent avoidance. Mammals that investigate them once never do so again. Even large predators like coyotes and tyras, animals that happily tear apart wasp nests and endure hundreds of stings for the protein reward inside, avoid bullet ant colonies completely. The venom isn't designed to kill, it's designed to teach. And it's so effective at teaching that it's eliminated predation pressure almost entirely. From an evolutionary perspective, it's perfect. From a human perspective, it's a reminder that evolution doesn't care about our comfort or suffering. It simply selects for what works. And causing unbearable pain works extraordinarily well when your survival strategy is make everything afraid to touch you. Recent studies have begun exploring the genetic basis of ponerotoxin production, trying to understand how such a specific, effective pain-inducing molecule evolved. The research suggests that the toxin originated from ancestral defensive compounds, but was refined over millions of years through selection pressure from increasingly sophisticated predators. Each generation of ants with slightly more effective venom survived better, reproduced more successfully, and passed those genes forward. The result is a peptide so perfectly calibrated to cause pain that it's become a natural model for understanding nociception, the neural process of sensing pain. Scientists studying chronic pain conditions, fibromyalgia, and neuropathic pain syndromes look to ponerotoxin to understand what happens when pain signaling goes wrong, when the system designed to protect us becomes a source of suffering itself. There's a dark irony in the fact that one of nature's most effective pain-causing molecules might eventually help us develop better treatments for unwanted pain. But for most people, The bullet ant will never be a research subject or a curiosity studied from safe distance. It will remain what it's always been, a small creature armed with a weapon so disproportionately powerful that it inspires awe, fear, and respect in equal measure. The indigenous peoples who share territory with these ants have dozens of names for them across different languages. But the meanings are remarkably consistent. The fire ant, the 24 ant, referring to the 24 hours of pain. The warrior ant, the ant that makes you cry. Every culture that has encountered Paraponera clavata has recognized it as something exceptional, something that transcends the normal relationship between humans and insects. We don't just avoid bullet ants the way we avoid mosquitoes or houseflies. We give them space. We tell stories about them. We create myths and rituals around them. We acknowledge that despite our size, our intelligence, our technology, a creature weighing less than a gram can bring us to our knees and make us beg for mercy that nature woe unprovide. The bullet ant represents the absolute limit of what insect venom can do to a human being without crossing into lethality. It's a reminder that pain exists on a spectrum far wider than most of us will ever experience, that the nervous system is capable of registering, suffering at levels that seem to exceed what consciousness should be able to contain. And it's a humbling demonstration that size means nothing, that some of the smallest creatures on Earth wield power over human experience that rivals anything we can create in laboratories or imagine in nightmares. The worst insect sting in the world isn't defined by tissue damage or fatality rates. It's defined by the quality of suffering it produces, the way it transforms minutes into hours and hours into memories that last a lifetime. By that measure, the bullet ant stands alone, unchallenged, the undisputed champion of a category no creature should ever want to win. But what if I told you there's something even worse waiting in the shadows? Something that makes these stings feel like a paper cut. Not an insect, not a sting, but a bite so venomous that it doesn't just cause pain, it causes liquefaction, necrosis, and death that takes days to arrive while you remain conscious, watching your own flesh rot away. Click the video on screen right now. The most venomous bites that cause flesh to rot alive.